Hello, everyone. This is Joni McGarry. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm excited to share my delightful conversation with Ann Bauer. Ann's a well regarded writer who has written 3 novels and co authored a memoir/cookbook with Hell's Kitchen chef Mitch Omer. Her essays, stories, and reviews have been published widely in outlets such as The Washington Post, The New York Times, Elle, Salon, Slate, Persuasion, and many more. At the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, she began to publicly question the wisdom of school closures and expressed concern about the certain collateral damage that would happen to children, especially those in marginalized communities. She sought some discussion on the topic, but instead was met with cancellation, both personally and professionally. So she took to Twitter to express her concerns there, and she found a community of like minded people who are concerned about lockdowns, masks, mandates, and the harm being done to us, not from the virus, but from the lockdown measures taken against it. This is how I became familiar with Anne, and I watched with great interest while she called balls and strikes very objectively and was never partisan. Recently, she's been posting about how she and her husband are finding it impossible to remain in Minnesota and that they're looking for another place to live, even as they have family in Minnesota and have lived there for many years. We talk about the reasons they're considering this move. We talk about the profound corruption at the state and city level in Minneapolis and Minnesota, and the changes in the landscape in Minnesota in the many years that Anne has lived there. We also talk about how to live well during this chaotic time and an exciting new project that she's working on creatively. Without further delay, I'm going to welcome Anne to the show, someone I now consider a friend. Hi, Anne. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Joni. I'm really glad to be here. One of your first guests, right?
Yes, indeed. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
I tweet a lot, and that is how we met.
Mm-hmm.
I have a background in writing, and by that I mean all kinds. I was an English professor for many years. I worked in advertising for about 10 years. I've been in journalism. Just everything I've done has been with words. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, I found myself alienated from just about every writing community I had ever been a part of. And I reached out on Twitter for the first time in my life and started saying, "Hey, I'm seeing this. Is anyone else with me?" And suddenly there was a community there that was surprising and has been um, really life-changing for
Mm-hmm.
me in a way, in terms of how I think about things. And so that is how you and I met. That's how I've met a lot of the people in my life right now. And it's why I'm here today.
Absolutely. And it's the same experience for me. I think when you started tweeting about what you were observing in the pandemic, it was really with the impulse of asking questions and saying, hey, can we discuss this? I never experienced you, as I was mentioning before we started recording, as somebody who is right or left or dogmatic or my way or the highway. You call balls and strikes as you see them. And my understanding is you were very concerned about school closures. And that was really, which everybody should have been concerned about. But that was the question that got you canceled, really, from
It was.
community that should be a thinking community.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same
Yeah.
exact thing happened to me. And yeah, so that was like a wake up moment for me. And in preparation for this discussion, I was listening to some podcasts that you were on, and you were talking about many different things. Your wake up moment being maybe perhaps like a Russiagate situation where you started to say, like what's going on in our media, what's going on with our parties. And maybe that like sort of led you to be able to be very discerning about what happened when COVID rolled around.
So I don't want to give myself too much credit. And thank you, by the way, for the balls and strikes, because that's really what I try to do. And as I said before we started, I get a lot of criticism from the left saying I'm on the right and criticism from the right saying I'm on the left. Um, I see a lot of issues, but I think it was in about 2018 that things started to feel dogmatic in a way that was dangerous in my area of the country, which is Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I was feeling this like everywhere I turn, I'm kind of afraid.
And you had
So
lived there for many years before that, correct? So this was really the first shift you started to see?
I'd lived here on and off for many years. I'd actually left and come back a number of times, and that's a whole story. It used to be a very easy place to live. It's no
Mhm.
longer an easy place to live. It used to be a very beautiful, there were so many benefits that no matter what went on, it seemed worthwhile. And I have very recently come to the conclusion that that is no longer the case.
Mhm.
But I won't say that I read about Russiagate and I was like, "Oh, I wasn't Matt Taibbi. I didn't say, 'This is wrong.'"
Yeah.
I was more confused.
Mhm.
And I was a member of it's an odd thing. I was a member of a community called What Would Virginia Woolf Do? Does that sound familiar?
It doesn't, but it sounds really compelling.
It was compelling, and it was part of my wake-up call. It was a community of women. It was started by a woman who I'm not gonna reference here because I think she had really good intentions, and what it grew into was something else.
Mm.
But it was kinda this women perimenopausal, basically. I think she'd gone into perimenopause at something like 40. And so she was talking about all these things that were changing. It was a lot of writers, it was a lot of very liberal women. And I kept finding myself in these threads that were fascinating, but they would get contentious and harsh really fast. And it was things like, how do you deal with curly hair? I was on this thread about how do you do the curly girl method? And at one point, someone said, if you recommend a shampoo with silicones in it, we will delete you from the. Oh,
Wow.
this is feeling so rule bound. And then there were other things, and I'm gonna go far and wide here and stop me
Sure.
if I'm getting too but it was like my local co-op went from, "We will warn you if a food is GMO, if it's genetically modified," to, "Don't you dare talk about GMOs are fine," and
What?
fake
Huh.
meat, and it was like everything felt like it was switching. I don't
And you
want
said around 2018.
It was about
Yeah.
2018. Impossible Burger was everywhere
Oh, yeah,
here.
don't get me started about fake meat. Yikes.
Well, I took a bite and I think it's the only thing in my life I've ever spit out, and I said to the person who had recommended it to me, "That tastes like petroleum." And it was everywhere here. It was like the health food. It was like all of these things were feeling weird to me. So then school closures.
Yeah.
I asked a question on a forum that was on Facebook. I was part of a I was a part of a group of academics and reporters and writers and scientists
People who
and
think and discern and question, one would hope.
people who used to.
Yes.
And and the governor had just closed the schools and the topic was raised and I said, "I think this is a really dangerous thing to do, especially for low income and special needs children, and we absolutely have to have a different plan for them." I was excised from the group.
Wow.
I received many, many messages from people telling me, "We're done talking to you." I was a regular contributor to the Washington Post at the time. Never heard from any of my editors again. I had 3 editors there that I worked with weekly. Like,
Oh gosh.
it was done.
How devastating, and how telling of, I mean, well, I don't really understand that mindset, honestly. I mean, I don't know what it says about these people, but I never in during the pandemic, and I took a very strong position, about college mandates, about the vaccination, and I never once thought to myself, I'm going to cut you off because you have a different opinion. So I don't understand that, and it must have been devastating to you to be in that community where you had collegial respect and admiration for each other, and you raised a question.
It was devastating, and looking back, it was good. Um, I don't know if I could have pulled it back. I wasn't
Mm.
I wasn't a heavy hitter. I wasn't someone who was appearing front page of the Washington Post. I was the, "Oh, isn't this an interesting idea? She's writing about some cultural trend." But my husband and I sat down that night or the next night, and I just said, "This has happened, and I don't know what to do.
Mm.
My income seems to be gone overnight.
Wow.
Um, all of these people have called me a Trumper, and, and I had, yeah, but I was the farthest thing at the time. Um,
But it was such a convenient thing, because people couldn't even see in any kind of shade of gray. It was like if you didn't go along
yes,
with the narrative, you must be, a MAGA or a Trumper. And I think it's so effective because what it does is shuts down any conversation. It relieves that person calling you the name of the obligation to engage in good faith. Just takes it
yes.
right off their plate.
It does, and around here, it was an immediate, it was like saying, um, "You're a pedophile."
Mm,
It was like you immediately are moved out of our group for good reason.
wow.
And my husband, who feels as I do, only more firmly,
Hmm.
said, "You are right. We are hurting children. You've started. You have the voice. Just go. I will support us."
That's great.
And he has done so ever since. I have never brought in, I mean, when we have gone to our accountant year after year, he looks at me and is like, "Are you still working at all?" You know? But that was our deal, and our deal has sustained, and I now say what we think is right, no matter what the consequences. That's my job. And he reminds me often, "That is your job. Just say
Wonderful.
what is right."
Um, and that's what makes you so appealing to me personally, because I have a lot of groups of new friends. I'll call them, as you. We connected because we were all disenfranchised from people we thought were reasonable and could have discussions with us about things. Um, but one thing I really admire is just, again, how you don't fall into either trap, either side, because there's a surprising lack of that, I think, on both sides of the so-called aisle, of that kind of objective discernment. And I learned from you about that. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank
Thank you. Because
you.
it reminds me. Um, I wanted to talk to you also about your latest set of tweets about the state of Minnesota and your personal journey of deciding, whether it's worth it to stay, like you mentioned. What were, and then also just about the incredible, staggering fraud that they're starting to uncover in the state of Minnesota, which I listened to an interview today. The AG there estimates that he's probably going to find $1 billion in fraud, and that's 3% of the budget of the
Oh,
state.
no, 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 it was not the AG.
Oh, who did I? I thought it was
Our
the.
Attorney General is Keith Ellison, and he has
Oh, well,
consistently ignored.
who's Joe Thompson?
Joe Thompson is, I believe, a federal attorney for this
Okay.
area.
Okay. Yeah, so
the
anyway, tell me more
AG is
about
sort of
that.
a problem.
I was wondering. Okay. So anyway, you're in a situation where you're looking at all this. I don't want to take away from your story, but this is probably part of it. And you
This
start
is
thinking,
part of it.
okay,
Yeah.
tell me more about that. What is your experience now, and why are you thinking that it's no longer sustainable for you to live in Minneapolis or Minnesota?
So if you look back at my tweets, and I have purposely left this up, I was a fan of Governor Walz when the pandemic started. I was sympathetic with his decision to close schools. I thought it was wrong, but I thought he was making it in good faith.
Hmm.
I thought that he was um, handling the pandemic in a genteel way. There was even a news story where he made contact with Trump, and it was this, we can come together. There was about a 3 to 4 week period when I thought about this man who I had declined to vote for because he was deeply unqualified. But
But you were giving him some slack.
I thought he was doing okay.
Hmm.
His behavior during the pandemic went from what I saw as well-meaning to just all out nutty authoritarianism. He reveled in having these frequent news conferences. We were under stay-at-home orders, don't go out. Schools were closed in the two urban districts, Minneapolis and St. Paul, which are, of course, the lowest income districts, for almost 2 years.
Unbelievable
People were
collateral
dying
damage
alone.
there.
It is
Yeah.
epic.
Yeah.
And, people were dying alone in hospitals.
Mhm.
He was monitoring funerals. He is famously the governor who set up the snitch line,
Right.
I
The North
believe.
Korea line.
Yes. And so we were under orders to stay inside, and if we had people over to our house, there was a snitch line for neighbors to report us. This was disturbing on a level that is I never thought I would see such a thing.
And yet so many people seemed unbothered by it. And still they're not bothered by it. It's really remarkable. But I agree with you. It was astounding to wake up in America and have to turn on the radio every day and wait for your governor to tell you what you couldn't
Right.
do
Yes.
every day.
And, it became very clear to me that a lot of the people who went along with it assumed that they were exempt from it. That seems to be the way. It took me about a year to see that the elite classes of people, and a lot of those people are attached to government here. Again, it took me a long time to realize that the reason people attached to government are elite here is because there's so much corruption. But the people who were unbothered because these rules applied to other people. They had bubbles. They
Hmm.
had
Pods, education
pods.
pods.
Yes, they had private schools. I had one woman tell me they were still going to their country club because those were the right sort of people who wouldn't infect anyone. It was just
What?
this sort of idea. In fact, we had basketball courts and recreation centers closed,
Mm.
but golf courses were operational.
Well, that
So
tells you something.
absolutely. Everyone at a certain level of, the more important pig level was just fine. And so they supported these rules in large part because they didn't adhere to them.
Hmm.
I adhered to them in part because no one would associate with me because I was branded a Trumper. But that's another thing. Um, we came through COVID and we really seriously thought about leaving the state. We looked at Florida. we're just not Florida people. We just couldn't do it. We
Mhm.
seriously looked at Texas.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we decided our friends, such as they were, we had a few left, were here. Our family, we have an adult son here in the Twin Cities, my elderly parents. It was like
It
there were
makes a big difference. That's a hard thing to
yes.
leave.
And we decided at length to stay. It was hard.
Mm.
One factor was we found our dream house. We found it in 2023. So it was like far enough after the COVID sort of surge in housing prices. We could actually afford it. It was on a beautiful lake. It was everything we'd wanted. And we said, okay, we can be here. We can be part of the resistance that makes this place better.
Mhm.
Two factors have gone into our deciding, no, three factors that we cannot. The first is I started working with politicians who were opposing the current Democratic regime. Republicans, independents, people who stepped forward, they said, in order to stop what was going on here.
And when you say what was going on here, just sort of a march toward tyranny and, unreasonable governance. Yes?
Yeah, Tim Walz has said, I mean, first of all, look at his just bizarre and clownish run for
I
vice
was
president.
I don't understand. Yeah, the fact that they picked him was just a mystery. He was very strange during that run. So, yeah.
Well, wasn't that a revelation? I mean,
I didn't really know much about him before, but I thought, "Yikes, poor Minnesota."
yeah. And he really showed himself to be not only dumb and kind of evil, but really wacko.
Yeah,
So, and yet he'll be voted in again. And that is part of my point here.
yeah.
The opposition to a Tim Walz here in Minnesota is not even trying.
Oh,
There is a kind of controlled opposition thing going on. The candidates who are chosen by the Republican Party or the independents, whoever it is, tend to be weak, dumb, just not up to the task. And part of the problem is there's a lot of money to be had from the national Republican forces. And if someone will just get in there and say the right things, I'm going to try to stop the march towards socialism, then they can pull that money down. Then they lose handily because, I mean, it's Minnesota, it's so blue.
mhm.
But I worked with candidate after candidate. I worked with 4 different candidates. Um, 3 of them were absolutely not up to the job. One of them was, but decided, "I don't want the job, it's just too awful here."
Yeah.
And so I realized we're never gonna get anyone else in power. The second thing is, and I actually made a phone call this morning to ask if I could say this on your show. I am disclosing this for the first time with you, Joni McGarry.
Well, I have a scoop, so please go on.
You have a scoop. Um, some people came to me about 4 months ago and said, "We have information about corruption at a very high level in the state of Minnesota. And would you like to write about it?" And they told me what it was, and I'm like, "Oh my god, no." I don't have the reach, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the resources. I am not your person, but I'll help you find people who can.
Mhm.
I have just enough connections in national media, both leftover from my previous life and because of Twitter,
Mhm.
that I went to some pretty powerful people and I said, "Do you want this story?" And they said, "Oh, yeah."
Mhm.
And they came here, worked on it for a long time, And I was sort of their driver and their guide, and I had nothing to do with the actual telling of the story. I was just sort of facilitating.
Mhm.
But as I was doing this, I found out that this state is so corrupt, that this is not just,
It
oh, bad
wasn't.
luck,
Yeah.
random fraud in this department and that department, and oh, look, this department, and oh, it's over here, and how is this happening? It is organized, it is systematic, and it is built into the government system in Minnesota.
I was wondering about that because when I was looking at the expenditures on the state level, and there's such a high expenditure for disability per capita. I think it's the highest in the country, and New York is a second, but by a long shot. And then
Yep.
your social like spending for welfare for impoverished people is maybe second in the country to Massachusetts. And then there's all this fraud, and I thought, well, somebody's identified a game,
Yes,
and it's unfortunately it rapes the taxpayers, but it also extremely hurts the marginalized communities where those funds should be
exactly.
used honestly and effectively and efficiently. So you're going around with this reporter digging into this corruption as their driver and the facilitator.
Yeah, just kind of the let me recommend a restaurant person,
Hmm.
but I was crushed. I was
So you saw that it was much worse than it was even suggested in the headlines.
oh, it's not worse, it's different. It's worse in in that it is not groups of fraudsters. It is the very machine that
Ah,
runs our state. So we have my my husband actually put together a spreadsheet of tax rates for every state, like surrounding us by, I don't know, 3 or 4. And it was income tax, sales tax,
corporate
corporate
tax.
tax, property tax. It was
Hmm.
all of them.
Hmm.
We rank at the highest level on every single tax.
Wow.
So when you look at, you know, I knew that. I knew that 2 years ago when we bought this house. I knew that we were going to pay more tax
Hmm.
than anyone in Iowa or the Dakotas or Michigan or Texas or pretty much anywhere else in the country. But I thought that that money was going for supports that were admirable,
Hmm.
and it's not. It's going into the pockets of politicians, administrators, NGO executives. Um, we have this recent thing is a housing stabilization program for homeless people that is so rife with fraud before it's actually helped a single person. No one was housed. It is just money wasted, and I just can't stand it.
Well, it's criminal and demoralizing and amoral and evil. And do you think that there's any political will? I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any political will on the right to really get in there and throw this government out. Do you think that
No,
it's endemic all across the board there?
I do. I
Okay.
do. I think the right benefits in the way that the left has always benefited from. We haven't encoded abortion rights into law, and now we can fundraise off that.
Right. It gets out the vote, it gets a lot of people outraged. Yeah.
Yeah, and the right here fundraises off the existence of all of this fraud and, you know, really pretty traditional socialist communist graft.
Mhm.
And that's how they make their nice
Money.
two-boat livings,
Yeah.
and
Um,
everyone's pretty happy with it.
well, I read one of your tweets. I'm going to read it here because it really was so profound. It said, a pivotal moment for me was attending the Doge lunch given by a Minnesota think tank, where, is it Bill T. Walsh, outlined the precise level of waste, fraud, and cronyism, for example, large payments to school administrators in Minnesota. There was no potential solution offered other than, quote, voting Republican, which isn't going to work unless serious, decent candidates run. It was like a picture painted of all the stupid, dirty horror of Minnesota policy and government, and we were left with, and this is where you are. All I could think was, why would we stay? I attended the lunch with a friend. She told me the exact same, it had the exact same effect on her. She and her husband are looking at Tennessee. When I read that, I thought, what they're saying is the current system isn't going to reform. Just vote Republican. I mean,
Mhm.
it was such a cop out and so deeply sad. It really it struck me.
And we have a couple of people from that center of the American experiment who are just marvelous writers and who are there's a man named Bill Glahn who I follow, and I love everything he puts out. He's very funny, and he talks a lot about the fraud and everything that's going on here. But the fact is, he has profile and he has a job, and all of the people with that think tank have their position and their spotlight
Hmm.
because they're fighting the good fight against all of this dastardly corruption. And so it's really like an old Western, and it's just great if it all continues so that the guys in the suits can keep making bank.
Yeah. It's ironic that the very thing they're said to be against is the very thing that literally, well, not literally, but through the back door is paying their bills and giving them their platform. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And well, they're either aware of that or they're not, but the beat
Well,
goes
I've been
on,
saying
right?
it. They should be aware.
um,
I'm sure
so,
they're not fond of me, but that's okay.
well, that's what I love about you. You're going to say it, whatever, you're just going to tell the truth. So you're
Yeah.
seeing all this and you said there were a couple of reasons. Was there another reason that made
Oh,
you and
yeah,
your
no,
husband
the
knit?
final reason is
Yeah.
that, my husband he's a very talented tech guy. He's been in tech for many years,
Mhm.
many, and he, was laid off in February, immediately got another job, so it was all great, and he loves where he landed, and it all worked out, but he had this hiatus, and he said, "I'm gonna start working on a personal project that I've had in mind for a while." And he started working on this app that we thought, "Oh, that's cute, that's something to do with your spare time." When he started talking about it and telling people about it, the reaction was like, "Oh my god, that meets a need in the marketplace. That's a great idea. How do we invest? What do we do?" But the wall that we kept running into was, "Oh god, you can't do this in Minnesota."
Because of the tax structure for businesses?
The tax structure for businesses is insane. I mean, any money that we got from this, any money that we were, the corporate tax here is nearly 10%.
Wow.
And we're like, "Why would we do this?
Right. When you could
Why
do it
would we
anywhere.
why would we contribute something innovative and creative to a state that is actively squashing?" So that was the final thing for us
Mhm.
was saying, "Are we gonna pursue this business?" Oh, and here's the reality of it. Assuming it takes off in a couple of years, my husband would want to perhaps pull back on his full-time work and devote himself to this. You
Mhm.
never know. Can't say. We couldn't afford it living here. No way. The taxes are so high, we could not sustain our life.
It's really astounding.
And they just keep going up. There are new levies, there are new special assessments. Every time we turn around, something is going up. There's another fee.
And and this will veer us off the topic a little bit, but it can't be just to fund the fraud. Why is there such an appetite for increasing that kind of burden on the population there?
So here's what I think, and I would have to have an economist check me on whether or not this is true. The home that we bought it's the tiniest home on a block of much nicer homes on a lake.
Mm.
So we're talking, some of our neighbors live in million plus
Hmm.
dollar homes. We do not. Some of our neighbors do. We did a neighborhood walk one night where everyone stopped in front of their house and said, this is who we are.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it was a really nice idea. Um, I kind of did a rough count. About 2/3 of the people who live on our block in these quite lovely homes work in one of three places: state government, city government, or the university. So the $1 million plus houses tend to have people in them who work for institutions that are taxpayer supported.
Hmm. That's
And that's
interesting.
what we have here. We have a huge class of people: lawyers, academics, administrators. Um, we have a teacher union chief on our block. Um, we have a state parks administrator on our block. Again, in $1 million plus houses.
And their income comes entirely, well, not maybe, I don't know these people, but it's based on the growth of these institutions.
Yes.
And I've worked in private business. And I know the impulse there is like, you want to grow your budget all the time. You want to grow your thing. And I think there are limits when it's a for-profit company that you don't necessarily have those same limits if it's academia or government. There seems to be a much more gentle elasticity about the things you can do and the way you can grow. But that's a very interesting observation. So now you're thinking, we want to move. And I also saw your report that you've gotten some, pretty ridiculous, nasty, and I will say stupid feedback from some people on Twitter about, don't move here because you're going to turn the whole state blue. They don't know
Oh, I
anything
got
about
tons of
you.
it.
Yeah.
Got
And
tons of it. Yeah.
so, as you sift through all that and you look at other states, what are you seeing and what looks sane to you compared to where you are now? Is there any bright light on the hill that looks appealing?
Well, so everything looks sane compared to where we are now.
Well, I wouldn't steer you to New
I
York
mean,
State or Massachusetts, just saying.
no, no, I would not do either of those. Um, so I kind of threw off in the post, I think we're moving to Texas. Texas is very appealing to us for a number of reasons. We have a number of friends in Texas. My husband's current job with an employer he loves is in Texas. There are a lot of good reasons to go down there.
Hmm.
And we're thinking about it seriously. I did get a lot of pushback from people who said, "Do not come here. We don't need we don't need people like you who are going to turn the state blue." And I actually didn't think it was stupid. I thought it was good information. In 2009,
I meant the Phi Beta Kappa.
oh, the Phi Beta
Yeah,
Kappa.
yeah,
She was
and
just
that was just
beyond,
that was
wasn't
too
she?
much.
Yeah,
It was too
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I
She
mean, I
was like
get
a
it.
caricature.
Um,
Um, So, no, I appreciated the information because we did once move to a place that didn't want us, and it was awful. We moved to Seattle in '09 because my husband took a job with a it was a company called F5 that was making all of the broadband for, everyone. It was a big, big deal. And we would go into places and say that we were new to the community, or, that we just moved there from Minnesota, and people would just walk up to us and say, "People like you are ruining Seattle. Get out."
Wow.
And it was this response to the tech influx.
Hmm.
And I heard a little bit of that from Texans. And I thought, well,
Well,
good
Texans have
to know.
probably had a lot of it during the pandemic,
Yeah.
for sure.
So I filed that away as information. We have, of course, we've looked at Tennessee for a lot of reasons. It's beautiful. It's certainly a tech hub that is interesting and up and coming, I think. Also, the cousins that we're closest to in the world just moved to Kentucky to a community very near Knoxville. So we were like, oh, you know, that could be lovely.
Mhm.
And then the other state, weirdly, is Iowa. Iowa is beautiful,
Mhm.
which no one knows. I went to grad school there, so it's a place that we know and love. And it is, when you say common sense, it's about as common sense as you get. It doesn't have zero tax like Texas.
Mhm.
It has 3.8%, which is, almost a third of what we're paying now. Great. I wanna pay some tax. I wanna beautify the roads and the parks and the libraries and take care of the homeless people. I
Mhm.
wanna do that. But you aren't hearing about rampant fraud
Mhm.
coming out of Iowa. So we are very seriously looking at those 3 states.
What do you make of well, there's such an extreme difference between all these states, and I always find it interesting that they probably all didn't start out this way, right? When they were,
Mhm.
years ago, and when I think about Minnesota, I never knew that much about it until the pandemic, when I had friends who on the ground there who were also dissident thinkers, and I worked with projects virtually. I've never met them, and they would start telling me about Minnesota. Do you think there was a time at which things changed there, or was
Oh,
it
yeah. Yeah.
and you think it was maybe with Waltz or before that? Like, what triggered the change from it being a state where people were reasonable and there wasn't this fraud to this dystopic tax machine, fraud machine?
I think it was a lot of things, and I'm gonna throw some out and just know that I could be wrong about some of
Mhm.
these. I don't know if it's I think there was an idealism here that came out of the Wellstone era that people clung to.
And he was the man he was killed in a plane crash, right? And
He
people
was.
loved him, and he had such great leadership, I
He was a
think, right?
he was a lovely person. I was maybe 24 and working as a reporter, and I interviewed him. He was just a lovely guy. He was very far left, and he was, I think, who knows? I think sincere and really wanted to make this, that kind of, um, Tolstoyish, ideal utopia of everyone works together and gets along. When he died, a lot of people took up the mantle, but it is shocking how many of them were scammers.
Mm.
One of his right-hand guys went on to do scams in every direction. He had some hockey team scam. He actually worked with someone I know for a while and scammed her. He's just sort of a serial
Scammer.
scammer.
Do you think that this kind of thing do you think politics attracts people that maybe don't have their constituents' best interests at heart, or perhaps the people who succeed
For
are
some
wired like
reason
that?
that became what happened here.
Mm.
And I'm going to point to a book that I love, Jonathan Franzen's Freedom.
I think I read that.
It was set in St. Paul, Minnesota, not far from where I live now. And it was about I mean, way early. It was set, I think, in the 90s. And it was about the virtue signaling, I recycle, you know.
Was it the sunshine? The guy who was exposed? Well, anyway, go on. There was some kind of sunshine
About
organization.
birds.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can't remember.
but he really nailed the kind of rise of the calm, beautiful garden. I have a lake cabin, but that's okay because I recycle. So therefore, if I have 2 homes, I am making that kind of
Yeah,
Al Gore, I can be on a plane every minute of my life because I'm doing good work.
because I don't use incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of that built and grew here, and it became the foundation of the liberal community.
Mm,
I think Minneapolis, St. Paul, which, didn't have a coastal reputation and didn't have a kind of literal big city Chicago thing going on, wanted to be special.
mm,
And it was this rise of the elite, meritocratic, um, progressive
mhm,
that became what we were proud of and what we were
mhm.
known for. And it just kinda caught cancer, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It became this awful thing where if you say the right thing, you get ahead in our community, and if
Mhm.
you say the thing that shouldn't be said, you are trash.
Yeah.
And I've been trash here for 5 years, and I'm kinda like, whatever. I don't know what I can say on your podcast.
You can say whatever you want.
You know what I wanna say, like, "Fuck them, I don't care, I'm gonna
Yeah,
live my nice life by the lake and do what I want
right.
and, you know, see my son," and yet, it got to a point where I'm feeling like someone has their hand in our pockets.
Yeah. It gets
And
really
it
oppressive after a while.
Yeah, they're just yanking out the
Mhm.
money we earn.
And
Of course,
squandering it.
I can't earn anything because I've been
Because of them.
excommunicated.
Yeah,
So, just all the way around, we got to the point where we said,
yeah,
"Okay, we get it. This
yeah.
is not sustainable."
What do you think would is the like, okay, so you'll leave and find hopefully a better place, and hopefully that won't be such a loss in terms of leaving members of your family. But certainly, I know other people who have left states because of policies or corruption or social excommunication where they were, but they've had to make that sacrifice because they could no longer abide the conditions on the
Mhm,
ground, whether it's, the vaccine laws or the taxes or whatever. Um, then so these states remain corrupt and keep going. What do you think it's going to take for things to shift? I was listening to you on a podcast talk about maybe the market forces will finally shift some things.
mm.
Maybe it comes
Yeah, that
down
didn't
to,
happen. Yeah.
yeah. So, is there any hope, do you think, of reform? Or do you think these institutions and these governments are just going to have to collapse on their own?
Yeah, I think they need to collapse. I
Yeah.
think I think if someone went to prison, that would be great. That would
I'm waiting. I am waiting.
Yeah.
If there were some kind of punishment, real punishment for the people that did very bad things in the government or elsewhere, it just wouldn't happen anymore. But no one ever
Oh,
is held accountable.
I
I
mean,
mean, it
it's
would
always
happen, but
happened.
it wouldn't
It's
happen with this kind of
always
abandon.
happened. I think my neighbors, smart, mostly, frankly, way overeducated people, think that what is happening here is absolutely fine. It benefits them,
Sure.
but also it's nice. You know, it sounds nice to say, oh, we have the highest taxes in the nation because we're helping people. And they're getting the taxes rolled back to them in the form of whatever.
Of their jobs, their
And it all
positions.
works out.
Yeah.
And I think that there is zero incentive to change this unless someone comes along and says, this is federal money you're using to defraud people.
Hmm.
I was hoping that would happen with Feeding Our Future, which is the largest pandemic fraud in the nation. Was $250 million in child nutrition funds from the federal government that were stolen and funneled into sham NGOs. And
Oh,
a lot of people have gone to prison, but it's the the lower class of
yeah.
people. It's the people at the bottom of the chain who were thrown under the bus.
Right. Of course.
The people who orchestrated it are very much still in power,
Hmm.
and they're running it under a different name elsewhere.
Yeah.
So no one holds them accountable. Nothing will happen. The Fed just keeps churning out the dollars and giving them to them. What are you going to do?
Right. Well, I don't blame you for wanting to leave. And I hope that you find somewhere to land where the community welcomes you and your
Yeah.
business thrives and um, you do and you start writing again because I think your writing is terrific. And
Oh, thank
um,
you. I
you
am
know,
writing again, but thank
good.
you.
Yes. I mean, you were talking one time, heard you say about the power of fiction, the power of literature.
Mhm.
And I am a fiction reader. I recently reread Anna Karenina because, I can't remember the name of the book, the Parnassus bookstore. Who's the author who owns it?
Oh,
In
is that Ann Patchett?
Ann Patchett, and she was
Yeah.
holding the book up and saying, "This is a great translation. Everybody should read this book this year." So I read it again, and it was just fantastic. It really informs you about the human condition. To me, much more than reading a nonfiction book. And you were talking about the book Angle of Repose, which I'll pick up and read again.
Oh,
Um,
which I
and
love, love, love.
and you were talking about the power of reading something with flawed characters. Um, who
Mhm.
have real stories and a story about society coming apart and then knitting itself back together. Have you considered writing that book about what just happened to us in the pandemic? Not that
No.
I'm trying to lay it at your doorstep, but do you ever think about doing it? Because I think people can see things in fiction that they otherwise might not be able to digest when it comes at them in a factual context or a nonfiction context.
So it's funny you should ask. I did a piece for Tablet Magazine in 2021, I believe, called I Have Been Through This Before. And of all the things that I've written, I would say in the last 10 years, that is probably the work that I'm most proud of. And it's definitely the thing that went the farthest. I got messages from all over the world.
Gosh, that's so great.
Based on that work, I had a film and television writer contact me and say, would you like to turn this into a series? He and I started working together on a television series that we intended to sell to Hollywood. This was 2022, 23. Good news is I love him dearly. He became a friend of mine and we are, kind of forever colleagues. Bad news is we were trying to sell to Hollywood and Hollywood just got woker and woker and woker and woker. And there was no way. There was
Yeah.
no way. We went at them every time we went in with a pitch, it would be that kind of like, "Oh my god." to Minnesota. Like it was not to be. It was not meant to be. Um, he and I, my co-author and I, have recently gotten back together, and we have a new paradigm to tell this story. And we're very excited about it. And we've been working nonstop. That is one of the things that I'm doing
That's great.
that my husband is supporting. And I think we will be bringing you this story in a different format that's kind of a almost a merging of our television script with a traditional novel.
Wow. And do you have a timeline for when maybe we'll start to see this?
I would think by the end of the year.
Well, it's very exciting. I will watch with great interest.
We are we are so excited about this to the point where we have a collaborative relationship that's just it's excellent. He
What a
has strengths
gift.
where I don't. I have strengths where he doesn't. It just works. And he keeps saying to me, "I'm so glad this didn't go in Hollywood because I think we're making it something better."
Well, you can be true to your story and
Yeah,
you don't have to have somebody ruining it because they want to shove it through the lens of some kind of ideological view of the world, which I think
exactly.
would be a tragedy. Maybe this is the way. I mean, I think the reason wanted to talk to people on this show was to teach myself things that I didn't know. And I'm learning a lot from everybody I speak to, but to also ask the question of, given this dystopia we all find ourselves in, that we've woken up to since the pandemic, whatever the wake up moments were, and the losses we suffered for speaking the truth as we saw it, and what we've come through together. How do you live well in like this age of lies, this age of corruption that you're seeing that seems, inexorable? And one thing I like when you talked about this project, you just light up
Mhm,
with a great life
mhm.
force. Maybe that's your answer, is that you continue to create truth and in art and beauty. But what would you say, as if somebody asks you, how do you live well during this,
Oh, I have
hellscape?
I have a very definite answer to that.
Great. So,
Um, we did lose we lost so many friends
mm,
in the end, after being a COVID dissident. I published the unthinkable, a Wall Street Journal piece about how I finally capitulated the third time and voted for Trump because I'm like, "We need to get out of this." Um, Lost a friend of 32 years.
oh, Anne,
She told me I was immoral. And I was like, "Oh,
I totally get that. Believe me, but
what a wasted
it's
32 years." But anyway, moving on.
yeah. But let me just ask: Can you imagine? Can you imagine saying the same thing to a friend based on what they voted? I just cannot.
Oh my God, she voted for Kamala.
Well, right, but
And
you weren't
and
going
I
to.
was forgiving.
Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's stunning. But anyway, so you wrote this article, lost a friend.
So prior to that, and I'm just saying, our circle is so small. It's so small. We are at the point where we do not care.
Such a freedom.
It is huge. So I think it was December 31st, 2023. We sat down together, my husband and our dog, who's always the third, and alone together because first of all, we have no friends like in the air, but also it's like New Year's Eve was never our deal. It was like 8 o'clock. We had cups of tea. And we said, what do we want in the upcoming year? And we decided that we were going to make a list of the things that were most important to us. Everything above that first layer of the Maslow's hierarchy was on the table. You know, it's like, assume you have food, shelter, clothing.
Right.
What is most important if you have to choose 6 things to your happiness, our happiness, our sense of the spiritual, which frankly I consider more important than happiness, um, our peace of mind, our sense of integrity. And we went apart and we each made a list, and then we came together and we compared and we whittled it down to, you know, kind of 6-ish, maybe 6 to 8 things. You would not believe how simple that list is. It is the most basic thing. It's like our children, our marriage, great coffee. That was number 3.
Wow.
Wait, our dog was it was our marriage, our children, our dog, great
Okay, good,
coffee
because I
was
didn't
number
want your
4.
dog to overhear that he
Yeah.
lost out to
No,
coffee
she's so much a part of things. I put her in with both the marriage and
and the
it's like
kids.
she's the family.
Mhm.
Um, so it was our marriage, our children, our dog, great coffee, sunshine.
Mm.
And there were a couple other things, but none of them were what you think of. And it was days before we looked at each other and said, "Oh, you know what wasn't on the list? Career." Didn't even occur to either. Like it didn't ring a bell in any direction. I think it would have come in 20th, 25th. Travel did not make it. How many years did we spend money we didn't have to travel to Europe because that's what you did?
Right.
We don't care.
Yeah, I have let myself off the hook for thinking I'm
Mhm.
supposed to wanna go everywhere. Like my
Yep.
friend Cindy says, "Give me my kitchen table." I mean, there's some things I wanna go, but
Yes. And that idea
yeah.
that travel is some sort of achievement that makes you better,
Mhm.
how in the world did we get rooked into that?
Yeah.
So now, and there, if you string the list out, live music was the only kind of monetary value
Mhm.
that we put on there. But every decision we make, every dilemma we have, one of us will look at the other one and say, "Is it on the list?"
Mm.
No. Then I don't care.
You created your North Star.
Yeah, it's not on
Well,
the list. And if it is on the list, then, for instance, I will spend, and this is hard for me because I'm really careful, $6 on an excellent cup of coffee. Because I love coffee more than food, more than alcohol. You could take the food and alcohol away for the rest of my life. If you said you can have great coffee, I'd be like, I'm fine. I love it so much. And so that's what we focus on. We do not go to the latest trendy restaurant
Mhm.
and have their 6-course meal,
For
which
$300.
we used to do.
Yes,
Why? Because it was the thing you
to
did.
do.
We don't do those things anymore. Life is so much better. Oh my God, so much better. So we have the list. We have our dog. We have our home. We have each other.
That is the way.
Mhm.
Well, on that note, Anne, that's so inspiring. I loved talking to you today, and I will take that with me. And I can't wait to, learn about where you land and see this amazing creation that you and your writing partner will put into the
Mm,
world.
God, I hope
That
so.
that
Yeah,
is really exciting,
I
really
can't wait to
exciting.
see where we land either.
I know. So before we break, tell people where they can find you if there are places you'd like them to find you, and I'll put them in the show notes.
You know what? There's no place to find me except on X.
Well,
That's
that's worth the
It's
trip for you,
the
believe
only
me.
place I am. It's the only, social network I ever even look at.
Yep.
I am at Ann Bauer Writer.
Great. I'll put that in the show notes.
Mhm.
And again, I hope we get to talk again, Anne.
This was lovely. Thank
Yes.
you.
And thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.